Hi, I'm Lucy from Sew Essential, and today we're taking a look at how to grade between sewing pattern sizes. So most people find that they don't fit perfectly in the size chart, and they might be bigger or smaller in either the bust or the waist or the hips. I'm going to show you how you can grade between those sizes to get a better fit from your patterns. I'll cover things like darts, we'll have a brief look at trousers, we'll look at how to make sure corresponding pieces match up, and also the books and tools that will help you to get a great fit from your sewing patterns. So whilst I do grade between pattern sizes for most things that I make, there are also circumstances where I don't grade between sizes, and this is when something is particularly oversized. So I just think it's worth mentioning this because you won't always need to grade, or lots of people don't always need to grade. And the way you work out whether you need to grade or not, you can start by looking at the garment on the pattern packet. And if it's going to be very oversized, you might think, right, I probably don't need to grade between sizes here. But the way that you can check is you can look at the body measurements chart, which is usually on the pattern packet, and you can compare that to the finished garment measurements. So the body pattern measurements chart is where you measure your body to select your size. So these are the measurements of your actual body, whereas the finished garment measurements are the size that the garment will be in that area once it's finished. So if there is a big difference between the finished garment measurements and the body measurements, we say that garment has a lot of wearing ease, and those are the instances where you might not need to grade. So you might be thinking, well, how do I know what's a lot and what's not a lot? As a general rule of thumb, sort of 3 to 4 inches wearing ease is pretty standard. Anything over 5 is oversized, but I don't really ever think about that. What I look at are the finished garment measurements, and if I can't visualize that in my head, which I don't think many people could, I like to take a tape measure and I will measure around my body where the finished garment measurement will be. So if it's 40 inches, I will take the tape measure around my hips and I will measure 40 inches, and I will be able to see physically then the difference between where my body ends and where the garment will be, because that will be marked by the tape measure, and it will just show me whether there's lots of room there or if there's not so much room there. And then I can make a decision. So if I'm making, I usually grade from a 12 at the top to a 14 at the waist and the hips. But if I can see that actually there's lots and lots of wearing ease in this garment, if it's a boxy jacket or a loose fitting top or a loose fitting dress, and I take that tape measure around my hips, and I think, oh, that is going to be plenty big enough if I just do the size 12, I will just do a straight size 12. But it's always worth being aware of that, because, you know, sometimes you don't need to grade between sizes for that very reason. If, however, you do decide that you want to grade between sizes, it is very, very simple to do. So let's say that we want to grade between a size 8 at the bust and a size 14 at the waist. And what I would do is I would hold the pattern, if the pattern piece hasn't got the waist marked on it, I would hold the pattern piece up to my body and identify where the waist is going to be. But let's just say it's down here and we want to grade from an 8 to, let's say, a 12. And we can say we've identified the waist as being around here. All we need to do on a straight seam pattern like this, it is very, very simple, is we just need to identify where the bust is. And again, usually you'll have a marking of where the bust is, there'll be a bust marking, but if there's not, just identify where it will be for you. So let's say the bust is around here somewhere, and I would do this in a nice sharp pencil, but I'm doing it in a Sharpie pen so that you can see what I'm doing. But you just want to get your ruler and literally just draw a line from the 8 down to the 12, and then you would continue that up. You would continue on the 8 line at the top there, and you have then graded between those two sizes. So then you would cut along that line when you cut your pattern out. Obviously, if you're nervous about doing it because it's your first time doing it, you can always trace the pattern and experiment before cutting into the real thing. But on a straight seam bodice or a straight seam garment like that, that is as simple as it is. And then you would continue on down the size 12 for the rest of the garment. Now, if you're grading a pattern with the darts, we have to do things slightly differently, but it's still nice and simple once you know how. So let's say we want to grade from a small at the bust, and we can see the bust point on this pattern. Also, a bust dart will always point towards the bust, hence the name. So we can say we want to grade between a small here somewhere, and we want to grade to a medium at the waist, and again we can see the waistline is marked on this pattern as well. So we want to grade between those two sizes. The first thing we need to do is fold out the dart. Now, because we want a small at the bust, we're going to fold out the dart for the size small. So just bring those dart legs together like so, and I've got the bulk of the dart going down. That's the way most of the time you would want the dart to be. There is an argument that sometimes says for some sizes it can work to push the bulk of the dart up, but that's a whole other debate to get into. But let's just fold it down for now. You can see I've got the lines matching up nicely for the different sizes, so I know I've folded that accurately. And then all I need to do, I can either do it by hand or I can use one of the rulers I'm going to show you. I just want to grade between that point and the point down here. So you can sketch that by hand if you want to. I tend to use this ruler, which is really, really useful. I'm often grading between the waist and the hip, and I find this one really useful. This is available on our site, and I will pop links to all of the tools I use today. They're all available on our website for you to buy. The other tool you might like to use is a French curve. And again, we stock these on the site. You can get these in metric measurements and imperial measurements, and they've got lots and lots of markings on them, and you can use them in all different areas of the body: bust, hip, necklines, armholes. They've got lots of different curves that you can use and measurements that you can use. And then we also have these really cool mini French curves now as well. We've got different designs of these, but these are great as well for working in those smaller areas, so they're available to buy too. If you're struggling to fold your dart out because you're working with a paper pattern as well, it's worth mentioning that we do stock tracing wheels, and you can just run, it's got a serrated wheel on the end of it, you can just run that along the dart leg and that will weaken the paper there and allow you to fold that dart. But they're also useful for another part of the process that I'm going to show you as well. So if we fold that dart back, you might want to just put some tape on that to secure it. I'm just going to go for it, but you want to fold that into position, and then you want to draw a sort of nice curved line between those 2 points that we identified. So we've got our waist point there, and we've got our bust point there, and you want to draw that line in. Now I'll go over that with the Sharpie so that you can see really clearly. And obviously I'm just doing this quickly for the video. You could take your time and make sure you were, blending those curves really nicely. But you just want to grade between those two sizes like so. Then you just need to create your new dart leg, which makes the fabric match up when you fold the dart in. And to do this, you can use the tracing wheel again with the serrated wheel on the end. You can just draw that over that line, or if you don't have one of those, you can use a pin, and you just need to go through the different layers of paper with a pin. It probably will have gone through with the Sharpie for me. So I'll probably be able to see that on the lower layers of tissue paper, but just pierce along that new line that we've drawn across the dart. Just pierce that with your pin or your tracing wheel. And then when I open it up, I can see the new dart leg, I can see where I've pierced the paper there, and also where my Sharpie pen has marked the paper, gone through the layers. And then you can draw your new dart leg in there. And then when you sew that, that will all match up nicely, and you'll have a nice neat dart, and your pattern will be graded from a size small at the bust to a size medium at the waist. Now I've actually cut the pattern out along the new graded line, but obviously the other thing I need to consider, this is the front bodice piece, but I've got a back bodice piece that needs to match up. So I've got to create the same line there. And the way I find it easiest to do this is to fold out the dart again and then lay the altered piece on top of the unaltered piece. So if I now get the back bodice piece and put that down, so this hasn't been altered, but if I put that down and then I place my front bodice piece, which has been altered, on top, and I fold my dart out, because obviously when you join the front and the back you will have sewn your dart in the front. And then I can also use the markings I've got here for notches to make sure everything's lining up nicely. And I've got notches further down the pattern as well. And then I can just use my altered pattern piece as a guide to draw the line in on that back piece. And I'll just do that in Sharpie as well so that you can see really clearly. Again, this is all very rough, you know, I would take my time and do things a bit more smoothly normally. But you can see there that red line that I've drawn, that will now match up nicely when I sew those two pieces together. So whenever you make an alteration, you just need to think, is there a corresponding piece that I also need to alter? Whether that is a front and a back, or whether you have altered the bodice of a dress, you've graded out. Obviously, then you've got if you've got a separate skirt piece for the dress, you would need to make sure that the skirt piece was a medium at the waist down, and your bodice piece would be a small at the bust and grade down to a medium at the waist. So it's just thinking about which pattern pieces you're going to be joining together and making sure that any alterations correspond and those pieces are going to match up when you sew them together. And then one last example I wanted to show you was on some trousers, making some alterations. And I found this on the Cashmerette website. We actually stock the Cashmerette pattern, so I'm sure this will be one of the patterns that we've got on our site. If you haven't heard of them before, they are designed with curves in mind, so they come from a C to an H cup. And also they'll do things like do a design that's more suited to a pear-shaped body or an apple-shaped body, and people really like them for that reason, because there is a lot of information, a lot of thought that's gone into getting really good fit from these patterns. So I just thought I'd mention that. But there's an example here where they've graded from a smaller size at the waist to a larger size coming down the trouser like so. And I'm doing this in the Sharpie again, so it's really visible for you. And then they're going back in at the sort of thigh. So you can see there what they've suggested, and they're making alterations on both sides of the trouser leg. So we've got the front and the back, but you can see how they've graded and made those adjustments on both sides of the pattern, so that you know that it is adjusted on both sides. And you need to think about that with trousers. Trouser fitting obviously is a lot more complicated generally than dresses or tops. So if you're starting out, it's always great to start with dresses or tops, or trousers that are very loose fitting are easier to fit. But if you're really starting to get into your fitting journey in a big way, you know, you can look at starting to make some of these adjustments in your trousers as well. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can adjust. I'm sort of going off topic here, but you can adjust like the crotch curve, you can adjust the depth of it, but this is more getting into fitting. This red line is again just about simple grading between sizes. And if you want to get into fit in more detail, there's a book that I highly recommend, which I call My Fitting Bible, which taught me most things I know. I don't profess to be an expert on fit at all, but I do know how to make things fit me quite well. And that's as a result of this book, The Complete Guide to Fitting by Palmer and Pletch. I really do recommend this. It's full of colour photos. It teaches the tissue fitting method, which teaches you how to use your pattern tissue to learn to adjust your patterns to fit your body better. But there's lots and lots of information in here, and just the theory behind fit and how to alter patterns, and it really is a wonderful resource, and that is available on our website to buy too. So check out the links below for all of the tools and the book. You'll find everything you need there. And I do just want to mention actually that the book I just showed you is a great sort of general fitting guide. And it does cover lots and lots of different scenarios, different areas of the body. But if you're getting into trouser fitting, there is a specific trouser fitting book. As I said, there's a lot more sort of variables with trousers. Don't be put off by the very retro cover. You know, the information in this book is just absolutely invaluable. So many explanations, and I just think, when I'm learning, the thing that really helps me to learn is if I understand why I'm doing something, not just how to do it. And I think that's the great thing about these books. They really do teach you why you're doing it, why it needs to fit in that way, or why, you know, patterns are designed the way they are. It does help you to understand that, and then it sort of tends to stick more for me if I really understand the why. So I hope you've enjoyed that video today, and hopefully it's shown you that it isn't that complicated grading between sizes. It is something that I avoided when I first started sewing because I thought it'd be way more complicated than it is. But once I got the confidence to give it a go, I realised actually it is pretty straightforward, and I've got garments that fit me much, much better. So I hope I've instilled some of that spirit of experimentation and a bit of confidence in you so that you can have a go and get a better fit from your patterns too. All of the things I share on this channel, we also share in our weekly newsletter. So if you haven't signed up already, please do use the link below to sign up for our newsletter, and we'll give you a healthy dose of sewing inspiration straight to your inbox every week. And if you like what you see today, please like and subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.